Continue celebrating women's role in agriculture throughout the month of March. And we are talking with Minnesota Farmers Union Vice President Ann Schwagerl. First of all, just tell us a little bit about your background with agriculture, a little bit of background about your operation and what it is that you do.
Sure. I actually came to agriculture in a non-traditional path. I grew up on a hobby farm in southern Minnesota, but then my parents moved into town when I was 8 or 10. And so I didn't have like a true ag background. I went to school and then college where I met my husband. And I studied also not agriculture. I went into nonprofit grant management after college, working for organizations like National Geographic and United Way. And we lived all around the country for a while. My husband was pursuing a career in academia. And as it turns out, we were not feeling particularly fulfilled with that lifestyle. Relatively transient lifestyle. We lived in Kansas and Florida. I lived in DC after school. And while like I'm really grateful for those experiences, it was just not like filling my cup. And we had an opportunity when we were right before we got married. We were poor grad students living in North Florida. And so we used our weekends working for a farmer down there. We were lucky enough to get side hustle jobs for ourselves and found this farmer was a direct marketer, and he did rotational grazing around their farm. So they did some cattle, pork, and chickens and eggs. They were very, very busy people taking care of that many critters. And we ran their markets for them on the weekends, which was great. We would get up at 5 a.m. after working 40-hour plus weeks for our day jobs and, spend 8 to 12 hours, doing that work. We found that that was much more fulfilling work for us. We were working together as a team. We were kind of being our own bosses because we were, on our own to get the job done. And we had like that level of freedom that we hadn't gotten from working for other people before. And my husband grew up on a farm in western Minnesota, and his family was always very like, the farm will be here if you want it, but no pressure to make that transition. We made that for ourselves, which was really great and very empowering to do. So we were 27 when we were like, you know what, we're gonna do it, we're gonna be farmers. And we left and left our careers kind of behind and dived into being grain farmers in western Minnesota, which was a significant learning curve, I'll be the first to admit. We had like big grand plans for what we wanted to do, but we were welcomed with open arms from my in-laws who've been farming here for several generations, and started working very, very quickly, alongside my father-in-law to work on transitioning into the family farming operation, and then seeing what we can do with it to support two generations. We very quickly had two kids right after that. And we're trying to solve the puzzle of, how do we kind of live by our principles and our values, while also, of course, making a living. That's very important too. And that kind of led us towards doing we started with like non-GMO production, then moved to organic production in grain farming. So we've been certified organic since 2017, farming about 800 acres of that. And now kind of looking at what that next vision of the farm is going to be for us, for these two generations. My father-in-law is starting to get up there in age. And what does it look like if Peter and I are just the ones that are farming the land? What does it look like uh, in different kind of marketing schemes for us? Do we want to move more maybe back towards conventional or no-till production? There's a lot of stuff that we can talk about. But, the farm is constantly, I think, evolving. Farm looks a lot different than it did 10 years ago. when we had infants, and we were trying to juggle a very young family and the farming operation than it does today. So that's a very, very Cliff Notes version of how I got here, how I got into ag, how I got here today.
So, what does a typical day look like for you? I know that's a hard question to answer in agriculture, but just kind of some of the main things, your responsibilities and that sort of thing. We'll stick to the farm. We'll talk about some other your organizational type stuff here in a bit.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I mean, during the growing season, especially obviously during planting and harvest, those are like two completely different times, but we can talk about what those look like. Um, get the kids up, get them out the door and on the van for school in the morning, and then Peter and I take a fair bit of time in the morning to really sketch out our days. We started doing this when we were in Florida before we started farming. We like to have coffee time. We learned that from our farmer mentors down there. They used to watch the cows. We don't have any cows yet, but they used to watch the cows and drink their coffee. Um, someday we aspire to having some ruminants. We'll see what they do for us. But we kind of sketch out our day and what the plan is, and then kind of go in our separate ways. Especially with grain farming, it's really seasonal, up and down what you're working on. So some days it's business and marketing side of the farm, especially during the winter and hauling grain. Right now we're pulling equipment out. We're starting to look things over, get things ready for the spring, because I think that's going to come. That's going to come here in the next couple of weeks. I think planting season will come very, very quickly. Um, and then once the kids get home, thankfully, so they're elementary schoolers now, so they have a little bit more independence, so that they can kind of either join us in the field if we're doing field work at the time, or hang out on their own, entertain themselves, do their chores on the farm, and then kind of circle back. We try to do family dinner almost every night if we can, if we're around. And then my work outside of the farm kind of sometimes takes me away a little bit more than I would normally be gone.
So let's dive into that. So as the vice president of Minnesota Farmers Union, uh, what does being involved in obviously that organization, but other community organizations and those sorts of things mean to you and your family and really to your community?
Yeah, yeah. When we moved home, it was functionally like we were both transplants to Western Minnesota. We hadn't. Peter, my husband, had been away for 8 years, and I'd never lived out here. So we were both functionally starting over from scratch and looking for kind of community. And that first season, we got signed up with Minnesota Farmers Union because somebody came to our door and kind of talked about what Farmers Union means to them, and what they do in the state and kind of nationally. And I was looking for a group that kind of aligned with my values. My family has always been really active with labor and kind of being more progressive. And so I was looking for something like that, out here in Western Minnesota, and was able to find an organization that kind of aligned with my values. Certainly for that, we went to a kind of some of our first meetings there, and we're very much pegged as the new blood, fresh meat, and sent very quickly to state convention. I remember we had our firstborn Nora. She was like 8 weeks old when we drove down to the Twin Cities for state convention. A lot of my family is still based in the Twin Cities, so that worked out well. But we had lots of eager babysitters to come hold Nora while we did convention. But for me, that was my aha moment of where I got to see kind of that grassroots policy debate, learn about issues that are affecting family farmers across the state of Minnesota, because I'm in this like little bubble of grain farming in Western Minnesota. Like I didn't know anything at that time about like wolf predation and deer issues in southeast Minnesota, like all of these different things that we talk about now that I'm like very well aware of. This was totally like eye opening to me, and seeing that like little d democratic process about how we, like discuss and sometimes in a very spirited manner, and debate and then vote on like what we stand for as an organization, was very much like, oh, these are my people. This is what I want to get on. And it scratched a little itch in my brain that I wasn't getting necessarily from my day to day, day in and out farming experience. And I got to like meet other farmers who were doing interesting, innovative things on their operations too, right? Like that I just wouldn't probably otherwise know about. Different specialty crop growers or people who are like experimenting with different methods of like more sustainability on their farms, or just it's a huge breadth of or livestock production too of Minnesota agriculture that just like if you're in your own little bubble all the time you don't get to see. So that fall like raise my hand and be like, I'd like to be more involved, what can I do? Because it just became like evident that this was kind of a good home for me. And I got myself more involved with like next generation stuff with National Farmers Union. How can they serve next generation producers better? What are our needs that are unique for younger producers, and like how are they serving that? And then in 2017, I was asked to run for the state secretary position. And I did because I'm really bad at saying no to things. I was like, sure, I can do that. I can figure that out. I don't know what that is, but I can figure it out, which has been really a refrain for me in the last 15 years. I don't know what that is, but I could figure it out. Um, and I did that for 4 years. 4 years. In 2021, I was elected the state vice president. I knew that I wanted more, and I knew I wanted that when I knew that I wanted to represent family farmers, next generation farmers, and women farmers in agriculture, because I think a lot of times I don't think I'm saying anything too earth shattering. It's a really male dominated field. A lot of times I get asked, like who the farmer is, and thinking that it's my husband when we both farm. We both farm full time. And so like a lot of my work, is around, I love being the vice president because it's very much a choose your own adventure kind of position. I have lots of things that I need to do. Yeah. But I also have the freedom to pursue and advocate for things that really are important to me. So I've kind of carved out over the last 3 or 4 years a few areas that I focus on within the organization and within our kind of advocacy work in St. Paul and in DC. Among those things, I'm really rambling, but I'm sure that's okay.
Hey, yeah.
Among those things are around rural healthcare and accessing affordable rural healthcare, and advocating for our rural hospitals and clinics, and then climate resilience and competition work. So making sure that it's an even playing field for farmers across the board, for family farmers,
Well,
that we get a fair shake.
yeah, and we have the opportunity to chat with you kind of often, and it's so fun to see and hear the passion behind what you do in that role and how that plays into your operation and whatnot as well. So you mentioned a little bit about people, that question of, well, who's the farmer in your family, and it's both of you. Who are some of the people that have influenced you and your family on your operation or beyond in, you know, getting that hand in the air and saying, hey, yes, I want to be more involved? Who are the people behind that? What helps inspire you to keep that hand in the air?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm a big believer that strong women raise strong women. And so obviously my first person is my mother. She has passed away since I started farming, but she's always been the first one to be like, of course you can do it. Like there's never been a conversation of like, between me and my brothers or anything like of things that girls do versus boys do. So that's like my first inspiration. But then when we moved home to farm, moved back to Western Minnesota to farm, very early on, we were invited over by a neighbor, and I use that term loosely. They live 30 miles from us, but where we live, your neighbor is in your county. And we had coffee one afternoon. It was really very much like a get to know you kind of thing. And the wife there, she works for the University of Minnesota Extension, and she was like, if I've got one, they were also like transplants after living away from the family farm, developing careers and deciding to come home and farm. So they had like a similar kind of career path as I did, or Peter and I did. Um, she was like, you know what? For the first 2 years, say yes to everything. And I think she had an idea of like something that she wanted to get me involved in at first. Like now, hindsight being like, oh, she wanted me to say yes to this opportunity that was coming up a month or so, a couple months later. But she was like, say yes to everything, right? There'll come a time when you need to say no. But like any opportunity that comes up, say yes. Because like obviously, I think we all know the need is great in greater Minnesota for people to like step up and be a part of their communities and serve on boards and churches and civic boards, like fire, first responders, and like the need is there, townships, whatever. Um, say yes to everything. And that's like something I really did take to heart of like an opportunity come up and I was approached. For example, in 2017, I was still not getting to the say no part of my life. I was still saying yes to everything, apparently. I was approached by who is now my boss, Gary Wordish, who's been very quick to ask me to do things. And I've been saying yes, but to apply for a new leadership capacity building program being developed by the World Farmers Organization, which National Farmers Union is a part of. And they were looking for beginning farmers and especially women beginning farmers to like participate in it. And I was like, oh, I'm no one. I'm like, who am I? Who am I to like apply for something that's international? But he's like, don't sell yourself short. You could do this and learn a lot and build a network, and that would be pretty neat. And I said yes. I said yes because I hadn't gotten to saying no yet. And that took me on like a 22-month real journey of like personal growth and development, of meeting young farmer leaders from all around the globe, attending international events around food and agriculture, and really starting to kind of develop my voice around the topics that are really that I have a passion for and that are really kind of driving me forward. So those are some of the like the folks whose voices are still in the back of my head, who are saying like, why not me? Why not? And don't sell yourself short and say yes. There'll come a time when you can say no, but for a while say yes. See what that's like. Test things out. Since then, I've started saying no a little bit more. I miss my children. I miss my husband sometimes. I have to draw a line some days a little bit more firmly in the sand about saying no to things because opportunities continue to come up and the need to serve is great. And I really believe that public service is really an honorable calling. So just having to define that line is something that I think we constantly are evaluating.
That boundary that's important, absolutely. So for other women in agriculture or even just young beginning farmers that are maybe intimidated to raise their hand, to get more involved, to say yes, what is some encouragement or a piece of advice that you could offer to those individuals?
I think you'll find, if you do say yes, if you do raise your hand and you show up at that next meeting, it's amazing the number of people that you'll meet and you'll get to learn from, and you'll get to kind of expand your horizon and know that you're not like the only one out here. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from moving to a very very rural place, Um, and developing that network and that community has been so great. And it's really kind of broadened and enriched my life in a way that I feel like if I had said no more often, I wouldn't have like that enrichment that I do now. Yeah, so I
All
mean, it sweetens the pot.
right. So talk about, maybe pick one or two sort of turning moments or kind of aha moments that you've had as someone who's new to agriculture, didn't grow up in it necessarily. Were there things that surprised you about coming into the industry and into that profession that you didn't see coming?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I really realized how satisfying it is to see the tangible efforts of my labor. The boots in the dirt and hands in the ground kind of like you work hard and some days are really hard and not fun. But like you can see the outcome from your efforts from taking care of the land, right? Or like livestock produce taking care of your animals. It is so satisfying to me to be it, and I understand in a way that I don't think I ever did the nature of the calling that is agriculture, right? Because it's a hard life, it's difficult work. But to the pride that people who are farmers take in providing for others is incredibly high. And that was something that I don't think I really realized before I got into it. Um, and then I think the power, in my like taking off my farmer hat and putting on my farmers union hat is like the power of advocacy. To like actually have a direct outcome that will impact people's lives. For us, it's like we in our process in farmers union, we have annual meetings all around the state with our locals where people sit around kitchen tables or in church basements or in VFWs and they talk about issues that matter to them and they come up with ideas for like solutions of things that matter, things that are affecting them. And then those things roll up to our state and we talk about them and we debate them in our state policy. And then the staff of farmers union like takes that as their marching orders, right? From family farmers and families gathered around kitchen tables to St. Paul and say, hey, this is affecting people. Let's take it directly to DC and say that like the policies that you make here make real life impacts on people's ability to farm and continue to do what is an honorable calling, right? To produce food and fuel and fiber for people. So those were kind of the things that were my like big aha. I want to be more involved. I want to continue this. This is policy or this is work that I find very valuable, especially on those tougher days. To keep me grounded that like it matters that I continue to show up. It matters that I continue to do the work that I do. Whether it be on my farm or when I, put on not my farmer clothes and put on my like business suit and stuff and I travel into St. Paul, that work matters.
All right. Any final thoughts to share with us before we let you go?
No, I mean, I think I just encourage other women in agriculture, and this is part of the work that I do, is to continue to show up. I would love not to be the only woman on a panel in future panels, right? Like, I want there to be equal women or more women than men, God forbid, in in ag panels, in ag spaces, like continue to show up. You belong there just as much as anyone else does. And we should all kind of be there together. So I'm so excited that you guys are doing this session on women in agriculture on Red River Farm News. So I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's a lot of fun to, like like we've mentioned, hear the passion behind what these women do. And it's we've talked to a lot of people about that feeling of imposter syndrome. you
Oh
know
yeah. Oh,
just
1,000%.
Yeah, not feeling like you belong somewhere because you maybe don't understand, the lingo, or you don't have as much interest in the equipment side of things, but that's, you still know about it and you still have a
Mhm.
voice there, and it matters because you're using it, And
Yeah, that you're there. Yeah,
yeah.
I had a total moment of that, when I did that global leadership development training. And I was like, I'm surrounded by all these people who have like actually led organizations, like actual like either youth farming organizations or cooperatives. And like I'm like, who am I? Why am I here? And it was totally this like little voice in my brain, maybe it was my mother, in my brain saying, like these people are on a different portion of their journey than you are. But like you are here because you can learn from them, right? They may be further along on their journey than you are. That's fine. That's okay. Like learn from them. Learn from what worked for them, what didn't work from them, even better. And like, ooh, I did not know that would do that. And like there's so much to learn from each other that like absolutely show up because you can get yourself leveled up a little bit then. So that was totally a light bulb moment for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm part of an ag group that all of they do like Zoom sessions every couple weeks, and the ones that I've been able to jump on so far, I've been the only female that's been on any of those meetings, and a couple of them were, land rent and things like that. And of course, I farm with my dad, and we've got some beef cows and put up our
Mhm.
own hay and stuff, but we don't row crop, we don't rent ground. Now we'll be renting some pasture and stuff, but those things, it doesn't pertain to my life, but it was so interesting to sit in and listen to those anyway. No, I
Mhm.
didn't have a lot to contribute to the conversation, but it was really cool to hear how people kind of negotiate those rent deals and things like that. And it was just so fun to, yes, I probably won't use that anytime soon. I don't foresee myself using that, but the fact that you're there and able to take in some of that information is just, you can find yourself in some really cool opportunities that way. And it's been so fun to listen how you have done that and been a part of that. And thank you again, Ann Schwagerl, joining us here as we celebrate women's role in agriculture. Agricult-HER, of course, the program brought to us and made possible by the Minnesota Soybean Research and Promotion Council. Here throughout the month of March, we celebrate women on the Red River Farm Network.